Hello everyone and welcome to WhatCulture Gaming. I'm Josh, joined today by Ewan Patterson for something of a follow-up on the Superman news that we did last week. If you don't remember, some concept art leaked from a cancelled project WB was working on at the time, and some new information has arisen to clue us in to what that was actually going to be and why it might have been cancelled. Ewan has much more information than I do, so take it away, my friend.
Yes. So obviously you guys will remember the Superman image from last week. It looked really cool. I mean, it did kind of look like New York, but with a few metropolis-y elements thrown in. But it still looked cool at the end of the day. And the big thing that we thought there was that maybe this was, a Warner Brothers Montreal project potentially, and certainly not something that Rocksteady would be involved in because, for the best part of 2 years now, we've assumed they've been working on something Justice League related or whatever. But it turns out that they may have in fact actually been working on a Superman title that WB then rejected, because you know what WB are like, we can't have nice things, that sounds like a cool idea, but it doesn't sound like Batman, ergo, we will reject it. At least that's according to Geeks Worldwide's James Sigfield. They've reported on a few quote-unquote leaks surrounding the Arkhamverse over the past couple of years. And he said in a tweet from a few days ago that he's heard from multiple sources that Rocksteady pitched a Superman title to Warner Brothers as a follow-up to Arkham Knight, but that WB then passed on the project. Now, this is obviously a kind of a little bit of a shock. We've had rumours that Rocksteady have been working on a Superman game on and off for, God knows, 5 years now, but since they started Arkham Knight. And, he basically goes on in his thread here on Twitter that, he mentions all these Superman Easter eggs that went on in Arkham Knight. So you'll recall that if you go into Bruce Wayne's office in Wayne Tower, you'll notice that, Lex Luthor leaves behind a voicemail message. Starro appears in the Arkham Knight Matter of Family DLC. You can find him creepily hanging in a big kind of mini aquarium thing, which, is interesting because Starro is actually, I would consider him to be more of a Justice League villain. So again, that still leaves the door open in that department. But he also mentions as well that the destruction tech in Arkham Knight, so this thing that you use when you were going around in the Batmobile and destroying everything, that would have, quote, transitioned to their Superman game as well. So yeah, again, take all this with a huge pinch of salt. We don't really know. We've not really known what Rocksteady are working on for the past 5 years now. We've only had, rumours and hearsay. But this is the first time I feel as though someone has come out from one of these outlets and said that, we heard from sources that Rocksteady were for sure working on a Superman game. Whether or not that is true, it's up in the air, but it certainly doesn't seem outside the realms of possibility to say that they did at some point consider a Man of Steel title.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, like you mentioned, when Arkham Knight came out, all signs pointed towards Rocksteady's next project being Superman. Not only the outside rumors everyone was hearing about, but the references in the game themselves, in itself, it all felt like a setup to make Superman their next big project. And it's interesting that you mentioned the destruction tech in Arkham Knight, because I loved that stuff. I love barreling around in the Batmobile and taking chunks out of Gotham City. You could argue it's not a very heroic thing to do to cause so much property damage, but it was satisfying nonetheless. From some of the prototypes that we've seen from Superman games before, there's been a lot of focus on, like that aerial combat between two gods smashing through skyscrapers and stuff. And I know Man of Steel and Zack Snyder did a lot to discourage that way of depicting Superman, but it would, at the time, it would have made sense to take that tech and then elaborate on it in a much bigger Superman game. Why it got cancelled, though, I have no idea, because you'd assume that after the success they had with not rebooting Batman, but making Batman one of the best-selling and most loved properties in the gaming world, you would think that WB would have let Rocksteady essentially do whatever they want, and it seemed like they were very passionate about the Superman character, and essentially they could have done for Superman what Batman needed back in 2009, and I don't know why they would have passed on this. It seems like every single time someone pitches them a Superman game, they just kind of get cold feet. James, again, first name basis, that was weird. Sigfield, I'm going to refer to them as. My pal James, never met them. They also revealed last year that, WB were actively searching for pitches for Superman games back in 2013. They had 2 that were in development and then cancelled. So it seems like, I don't know what they want their take to be. Do they have cold feet when it comes to Superman? Do they not think he can be done properly in games, or is it because it's a major IP and they want to do it well? I don't know. I've got a lot of questions about these projects, Ewan.
Yeah, no, to be fair, I have my own pet theories about this, and it comes from looking at Warner Brothers' wider media strategy over the past 10 years. You know, they're very much Batman is the focus, even going right down to the comics themselves. Batman has by far the most comics at DC, Batman has by far the most television shows. Batman is he's the focal point of that mythos, and Warner Brothers know that Batman sells and Batman is a big character, and that the Arkham trilogy was amazing, and if people want more Batman, then of course they're going to be inclined to give them more Batman, which is why Warner Brothers Montreal are working on their Batman Arkham reboot / sequel / whatever. But the thing that frustrates me most about this is that this over-baturation, if you will, is that it really takes away from DC's other really compelling characters like Superman, I think after Arkham Origins, you could make an argument that, not doing a full-on Batman sequel to that game, instead, WB were working on Suicide Squad, and of course, even though the Suicide Squad film was ass, it did make a lot of money, but even then, WB weren't confident enough in their vision to continue with that. And my worry is that, from the signs that we've had so far, is that WB are so reluctant to try something that isn't Batman, and it's a frustrating thing as well, because if you think about Arkham Asylum, that was a risk for WB. Rocksteady had only done, Urban Response Riot something or other.
More or less.
Yeah, and the Batman had not had a great rep in video games, certainly a better rep than Superman, but at the same time I feel as though risk-taking is the only thing that's going to get us back to, as much as you can take risks with the most popular fictional genre at the moment, but it's so frustrating to me because I would have loved a Suicide Squad game, I would have loved a Damian Wayne Batman Beyond style game, and a Superman game from Rocksteady sounds absolutely amazing, so obviously we don't know what has and hasn't gone down, but it sounds to me as though this wouldn't be outside the realms of possibility given what we know about WB cancelling so many of Montreal's projects.
Yeah, and I think you mentioned something very spot on there in that, these wider characters, they shouldn't necessarily be risks, they're huge properties. And the stage was set to create this big DC universe, you know what I mean? We've talked at length in videos before about how WB essentially dropped the ball in creating this really fertile ground for DC superheroes because they've so narrowly focused in on Batman, and the games have been good and the wider Bat family stuff has been interesting, but the failure to see that expand over the past 10 years has been frustrating, and I think that's what we all kind of want to see from Montreal's next game and Rocksteady's next game, whether it's Justice League or whatever. You want to see that world expand because it feels like they've been cautious about pulling the trigger on that for a long time, and it doesn't. And like you said, it doesn't necessarily make sense, and I wonder whether is it a wider, perhaps, cultural misconception with Superman the character that, he's this Boy Scout, he's not interesting, quote unquote, and maybe that's why they're averse to it. I don't know, because I feel like you said, if you look across all of WB's output over the past 10 years or so, maybe even longer than that, when it comes to the Superman character, there's always been a desire to reinvent them or make him interesting to a wider audience, because there seems to be I don't know whether it's true, I don't know whether it's false, but there seems to be the assumption that audiences don't think of Superman the same way they think of Batman. They don't think of him as a contemporary character that they want to follow.
Yeah, only boring people dislike Superman. That's my hot take. I think the thing is, everyone has that phase where they used to love Superman as a kid, and then they get a little bit older, and they're like, Superman doesn't relate to the youth. And then as you get older, you kind of come to realize that this guy who is just this bastion of hope and integrity that is really compelling as a character. And the one thing I wanted to touch on is what are Rocksteady working on, what all the evidence we've had about their different projects over the years. And I wanted to go back to a thing that Jason Schreier said on the Kind of Funny podcast about a couple of years ago, and I think both him and Greg Miller at the time said that what they'd heard from Rocksteady was that they were working on something Justice League related, but Schreier said that for a matter of fact, they hadn't been working on Superman, but he did say, I think what we're going to see from them is a game about a group of superheroes, and it will be like a games as a service type thing, which is interesting. That comment was made a couple of years ago, and of course in that time we've had the announcement of the Avengers project, or Marvel's Avengers, that Square Enix are doing, and the thing that Josh touched on just before was like, we've been saying for years now that every year that Warner Brothers wait to get into Arkham game, or DC game rather, they're letting Marvel steal a march on them, and that's what we've seen with Avengers projects. So now Rocksteady are actually working on a games as a service Justice League game, and it's going to come out after Marvel's Avengers. You kind of got the Hawkeye syndrome there, where everyone assumes that Hawkeye was the first Archer because he appeared in the Avengers before Arrow, the TV show, came out or whatever. But he did say again in November 2018, when we were all excited about the rumors going into the Game Awards that Rocksteady were finally going to announce something.
Of course.
Sefton Hill basically tweeted out, he's the creative director on all 3 Arkham games, or Arkham Asylum, City, and Night, the ones that Rocksteady worked on. He said that, spoiler, the thing they're working on isn't Superman. And then after that, we had loads of Justice League rumors on 4chan, and then there was also a Rocksteady employee who joined the company last year who was working on QA, who posted his announcement that he'd gotten the job with a gif of the Justice League, but then he later deleted that tweet. So I think maybe the evidence points towards Justice League, but maybe, there are elements of Rocksteady's Superman pitch going in there. Again, at the same time, just it's so weird to me. I definitely see the monetizable wheels spinning in WB's head if they're pushing Rocksteady to do more of a multiplayer, co-op-driven Justice League game than a single-player focused Superman one.
100%. I think it's, even judging on the projects that WB has cancelled in the past, it seems like they're very eager on getting that multiplayer element in the game. Obviously Arkham Knight had multiple characters in the story that you could switch between on the fly. Sadly, that wasn't co-op. And then the cancelled Suicide Squad game was going to be that team up that they perhaps wanted. So I do think it makes sense to go down that route. And like you said, you've got this cool base to then jump off of. Perhaps if you have a Justice League game, that you can get the individual games for each member or something like that. But yeah, I think it is a bit of a tragedy that they have gotten out the gate, if this is true, after the Avengers has been announced, because from a base description, a team up superhero game that is a live service sounds exactly like the Avengers, like you said. So I wonder whether that's going to impact them going forward, whether if that turns out to be true, there'll be accusations of, I don't know, copying or anything. It's something silly, you know what the internet's like. But it would explain to me why they've taken so long in developing this game. It's been 5 years since Arkham Knight now, and we haven't seen nary a peep of footage. And unlike WB Montreal, who's received a lot of different, internal leaks that seem very credible over the past few years and have now officially started teasing the next project, Rocksteady have been incredibly quiet. And I think for a lot of us, that's made us worry a little bit, because as talented as that team is, it's a long time to be radio silent about a project, and the only updates we get are when they're hiring for, new programmers, or they're teasing a mocap session.
Yeah, I completely agree. It's one of those things where, I'm very curious and excited to see where Rocksteady are going next, and like you said, the disparity between the amount of leaks that we've had come out by Montreal's way and the silence going on at Rocksteady, it is a drastic kind of shift and thing. But yeah, I think we're all expecting a next-gen title from Rocksteady at this point in time. I'm curious to see how Montreal's title factors into this whole thing. It feels though if development is going on for as long as it has done in that kind of intersection between PS4, PS5, Xbox One, Xbox Scarlet, or whatever, there's going to be some sort of middliness again, and I really hope that Montreal don't have another situation where they create this fascinating interpretation of Batman, and then it kind of gets forgotten about or ignored because it's not a quote-unquote main entry or next jumping point in the series.
Yeah, that absolutely sucks. That is a topic for another time, which we should absolutely get into. But for now, I want to know what you guys think down in the comments below. Are you a bit gutted that Rocksteady don't seem to be working on a Superman game and their initial project was cancelled? Or is that okay if we do eventually get a proper Justice League experience? Either way, while you're down there, could you give us a like, share, subscribe, and head over to WhatCulture.com for more list news like this every single day. Even if you don't, I've been Josh. You can follow me on Twitter at JoshBroom with 2 O's, joined by Ewan, who you can follow on Twitter at
Ewan Ruins Things.
And we will see you soon. Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye.
I should have brought glasses. I should have got a tie or glasses and just go.